It's the 20th of November, believe it or not, 2022. Where the hell did this year go? Seems like all they've done this year is sit in front of a camera and yell at the nuclear industry. So actually it was a pretty good year. Let's get it on, I suppose. I'm going to be your host tonight, Dana Durnford, and also known as the Nuclear Proctologist.org. We are here to go to war. Feel free to join in, 709-589-4406. Just in case you're blind, and some of us are blind. We got oodles and oodles and oodles, just oodles of nuclear news. None of it's good. All of it's funny if you're being honest, I suppose. It's funny in the context of these people don't realize at some point the world is going to wake up and all their lies are going to be sitting there for everybody. Okay, so don't forget your Atoms for Humanity, IAEA. The A-10 Warthog only shoots dirty bombs, right? Depleted uranium munitions. These are dirty bombs. That's all they shoot, same as the Abrams tank. All right, the equivalent, this is an Australian said in a story. Now, the equivalent radiation dose, this guy here, of this is their cast. What that does is like 50,000 pounds of cement and steel and everything else, and they're going to put nuclear waste inside of it. Nuclear waste will just, the Wigner effect will destroy that in a few decades, no matter what you use. It's the bombardment of neutrons and X-rays and gamma shines and everything else. But he claims that if you're 30 feet away from the cast, it's the equivalent dose to eating half of one banana from 30 meters away. From 90 feet away, the degenerate puke says it's like eating half a banana. Which half? I wonder what they're talking about. This is a poll we have tonight, by the way. Should degenerate scum who claim man-made anthropogenic radiation is like a banana be jailed and lose their degrees? Because it's that egregious of a statement. It's like saying to your children, if you drink battery acid, they'll turn into the Hulk. Yeah, they should be put in jail. Yes, thank you. Well, I think they should be burned at the stake, but I mean, it's probably illegal in most places worldwide. It is what it is. You can't win them all. Nuclear power is not the answer to the Earth's energy crisis. That's a pretty good headline. I like that headline. That fits right in with Dana. That's what it does. This headline here is important. So what can replace gas, oil, coal, and nuclear? It's called geothermal. So aims to use X-rays to melt the rocks and repurpose coal and gas and nuclear and oil plants with deep geothermal wells. So you put in your geothermal and take out your gas, oil, coal, and nuclear. Now, the last couple of weeks, nuclear has been coming out and saying, well, we could do the same thing with small modular reactors and fusion power if we get it to work. But geothermal already exists. And you don't have to store geothermal waste for 1 million years. And you can repurpose all cold, gas, and oil plants. If you took all your universities and said, come up with a solution, do you think we wouldn't solve the geothermal solution, which is stupid easy? It's just going to drill down, tap into 1,000-degree temperatures. Oh, that's going to get bad. Back to the bad. Nuclear power. IAEA reports 437 reactors were in operation. 23 haven't generated power for at least 9 years, which means 437 reactors are not in operation. Which means 414 reactors are. Including 23 reactors that are not generated power for 9 years and may never do so again. But they reported, they're claiming there's 437. We covered a story on Thursday where they claimed it was 440. One good thing about you can count on with the nuclear industry is going to lie about every facet. And I mean every facet. In 2021, total investments in non-hydro renewables hit a record 366 billion, was 257 gigawatts of net electricity of renewables. Nuclear was 0.4 gigawatts, so 0.4 versus 257. I can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference? I can't tell the difference. The key challenge now is to maintain continuous cooling for the reactor cores and the pools for spent fuel. The fuel is not spent. It's only about 3 or 4% of it got used. It's still splitting the atoms. Do you think they're going to stay in the pool? Well, there's 120,000 liters boil off in every pool worldwide. There's over 1,000 of them each day. Each liter is saturated with physical atoms, anthropogenic man-made atoms. Got nothing to do with bananas, by the way. Did you know reactors don't make potassium or bananas? So they got to have power to keep the reactor core and the fuel pools cool or they'll melt down. Failure to evacuate heat from the residual decay. Why can't you just say it's stupid simple? What do you got to say something like that for? Would lead to a core meltdown within hours. Or a spent fuel fire within days. At worst, at best, if it's a new pool with very little fuel into it, it might take a week or two. But the fuel pool's got decades of reactor cores. They're mass genocide machines. They're doomsday machines. So they're always hemorrhaging radiation from 1,000 fuel pools worldwide, no containment. Each pool might have 6 or 7 reactors in it. All of them split in the same atoms. So say if it's got 5 reactor cores in a pool, and each reactor core powered 1 million homes. So that's 5 million homes worth of atoms being split each day and released into the environment from 1,000 fuel pools. It's absurd, right? So we got 414 reactors, but is equal to 5,000 reactors hemorrhaging into the environment from the fuel pools worldwide. Like, how many atoms does... You can put 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. Distributed out, that's 2 million illnesses. It's a guaranteed illness, up to 1,800 of them from radiation poisoning, the atomic plague, right? Your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. The more you get, the weaker your immune system becomes, and the more susceptible you are to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless. Because you're producing more white blood cells than red blood cells, you have less oxygen nutrition being carried throughout your body. It's very, 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 very important for all the species you're supposed to be the caretakers of on this planet, because they're way more vulnerable. In 2018, we'd installed nuclear power peaked at 400 gigawatts in 18. Wow. Wind capacity rose above 1,000 gigawatts, but it should be all geothermal, see? Because you don't need storage, right? On its way to reaching 1,600 gigawatts by the end of 2021. In just 3 years, solar and wind added 2/3 more capacity than nuclear at its last peak. Just curb stomped the degenerate nuclear. I'm liking it. U.S. rejects funding to reopen Michigan's nuclear plants, says Holtec, Chris Singh. He's the secretary, the treasurer, he's the accountant, he's the president, he's the janitor. He got all these jobs, by the way, Chris Singh. And because he couldn't care less about America, then he makes sure to poison us. There's nothing he won't do for his massive income that he gets from poisoning humanity. So the U.S. Department of Energy rejected whole text. There's another story coming up, more detail. In Michigan, which is on Lake Erie? I can't remember. Which has struggled to compare with natural gas plants and renewable energies. If you used geothermal, you don't, so coal, you got to bring coal, and a lot of coal to the plants all the time, right? Gas, you got to bring gas all the time to the plants. With oil, you got to bring oil all the time to your power plants. And nuclear power plants need 2 of those large ones to run on nuclear power, by the way. And so why not use geothermal, where you don't need all kinds of train loads of coal all the time, and gas and oil and everything else? Is that silly? Why go after something that's actually a solution, that's easy to do, that can replace all current, past even, plants with completely harmless geothermal? The Earth doesn't mind, I can guarantee it. Which has struggled to compete with natural gas and renewables. Nuclear power produces toxic waste, currently held at 28 plants across the country in fuel pools. All of them are hemorrhaging radiation into your environment, and almost all of them surrounded by farms. Total coincidence, that is, of course. Shut down of nuke plants might leave France in the dark. Not might, it's going to. France is in real trouble. Got half their fleet shut down from the Wigner effect. They're going to call it corrosion, but this is the Wigner, the gamma shines and neutron burst, the X-rays. It's a common flaw with all plants. 90% of the site is bombarded constantly. And because they're hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools, that's why you see so many heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, bipolar, schizophrenia in such big numbers. If you're eating from a supermarket, you're in real trouble. Great news, right? Sorry. Fuel drying system. This is scary as shit. Fuel drying system at the Finnish encapsulation plant is commissioned. So they're taking the fuel out of the pools and they're going to dry them. Where's all the radiation that's still splitting going to go to? Dirty. They're just a dirty. Copper canisters. There's Canadian from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, academics, were rolled out last year or the year before and claimed that copper will protect the fuel rods for 1 million years. Of course, nothing will. It's gamma shines and X-rays and neutron bursts. The Wigner effect will break down copper. Copper is not special. Copper's pathetic compared to a lot of tungsten and stuff like that. But it's cheap, right? Copper canisters. They're not copper canisters. They're coated with copper, but they're not copper canisters. The one thing you'll notice if you haven't been around this topic is the industry likes to lie, and they got whopper after whopper. And all we're trying to do is call out the lies as many as we can. You can't call out all the lies each day. You can't keep up with it, see? Every story is going to have a certain amount of lies. The stories are written by the nuclear lobbying groups, and then the media publishes, and that's how they get their monies. They do this with a lot of industries, but the nuclear is the big paycheck for them. See if I can find it. Hang on. Probably find anything if I keep looking. Lord knows I got. Oh my. Oh, well, there you go. What's the odds? What's the odds? What's that? I wonder. I'm going to have to bring it up to find out. Let's step back. Because this is important. They're claiming they're going to put it in copper canisters. And so that study came from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Found that copper coating undergoes little corrosion. There's the two whack jobs in Canada that sold their soul. It's finally confirmed the copper coating on a Nuclear Waste Management Organization, which is the industry in Canada is in charge of nuclear waste, which is probably the scariest thing imaginable. Designed containers for used nuclear fuel and is robust and thick enough to withstand any corrosive effect whatsoever for 1 million years. And your parents choked you at birth, you say? The paper shows we can reasonably expect. What the hell is the next expect, Dana? I don't know. I like making up words sometimes. About 0.25 millimeters of corrosion over 1 million years. 0.25 millimeters. Oh, man. There's 10 of them for a centimeter and 2.5 for an inch. So they're saying basically the width of your hair, a little over the width of your hair of aluminum, will take care of the nuclear waste. If that was true, why don't you do all the fuel pools with copper and all the tanks at Fukushima with copper and everything else? These are disgusting, despicable, revolting, standard, everyday morons for the nuclear industry. They were born bad. Their parents were bad people. Their parents worked in the nuclear industry, so they were bad people. Radioactive xenon-133, which will burn a hole through your lungs, sequester in your bones, and destroy the children's chromosomes, DNA, and stem cells. Same thing for all the species, by the way. Was 450,000 times above detection levels. It persisted for weeks, so you were supposed to abandon Washington. Because that would have been similar fission products of many different isotopes, right? It wouldn't have been just xenon-133, which is still bad enough. You're talking cubic meter. These are catastrophic numbers. So kind of think of fog, and the fog doesn't go away for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and months and years and million years, basically. And if you breathe it, it's going to sequester in your muscles, organs, your bones. Your body's going to attack it for the rest of your life with white blood cells, try to build a tumor around it. You kind of get where I'm going. So the fuel drying system, and their copper canisters are partnered up with the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, which is the actual industry. And for 18 years, they've been sitting on $28 billion, and they can't come up with a solution for the waste. They need permission to put from the community. So they'll give one side of the community millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the other side will cut their signs into with chainsaws. And so they know there's no way anybody's going to agree. They don't want a solution. They're not. If they were interested in a solution, they would have just found a spot and put it there. The drying of used fuel is insane. In order to dry it, you got to release huge amounts of radiation into the environment. Dirty buggers, eh? It's the norm. So don't let it get to you too much. Don't let it eat away at you like mine does. Placed in a water storage pool to cool more than 40 years ago, where it's pulsing atoms. And because it's got billions of microscopic cracks in each fuel rod, then they're releasing massive amounts of atoms directly through those little cracks, right? Even a limited nuclear war could be a climate catastrophe. Really? I never thought about that. Gee, that's amazing. The world's oceans in particular would be materially transformed and slowly recover for decades after a nuclear conflict. These are complicated stories, unfortunately, so bear with me. There's a good way and a bad way to tell a story. There's a quick way and a slow way. We're doing a quick way, believe it or not. I know, right? It doesn't seem quick. So the Bikini Atoll, over 1 million square kilometers, is severely radioactive, too radioactive. That was 2019 study. So back to this story. Even a limited nuclear war would be a climate catastrophe. Oh. Nuclear change would profoundly affect... Now, we've had nuclear wars to call nuclear testing, right? And so the big feller from the Soviet Union, single bomb was equal to 3,800 Hiroshima bombs, or rather Nagasaki bombs going off at the same time. Is that a nuclear war? There's a lot of examples like that. Hello, Dana. Oh, bear with me now. I got to get you on the microphone. Gart, how are you, sir?
I'm doing all right considering.
Yeah. Right.
Anyways,
go ahead, my
I
friend.
didn't run any more tests.
Too scary, eh?
I didn't run any more. Yeah.
Too many nightmares. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. I just got back from a memorial for my brother, and I got a chance to, see a lot of people, family and friends I hadn't seen for a long time, decades, years.
That's always interesting, yeah.
But I talked to him and I asked him questions, and there's a lot of people that seem to have a lot of bad health problems. Besides
nuclear.
Dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to fit it in perfectly, but I was expecting a lot of cancers and diabetes and all these other things.
Sure.
But the other thing you can fit into this over the past couple of years are, I'll just call them Mangala's meds. I've said that before. And it's a lot. Besides that, like I said, I talked to, people in business and everything else that I meet, and they always bring these things up. Now, my ancestors typically went into their 80s and 90s. My grandmother was like 99. they all lived like really long. And all my friends, family members lived to be really, for a long, long
That's great.
time.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so what did you notice? Anything in particular? I'm sorry.
No, just that. And besides the isotope testing and identification, I did read a lot of medical journals, and I have been reading them for years because I was expecting all this, and I listen to what they say. The information's out there with all this stuff, but I'm the only one I know of that actually owns this instrument, the gamma spectrometer.
Sure, yeah.
That I can actually identify the isotopes, unlike a Geiger counter.
It's hard to have a conversation with a person, right? About the subject unless they're switched on,
Yeah, and there's a lot of other people that like mention what you're talking about that I can never seem to get a hold of. John B. Wells. I know you mentioned
he wanted to put me on his show, and we done the whole show. Instead of me going, because they do the pre-record the shows, right? So instead of putting me up the next night like he was supposed to, he put up Ernie Gunnarsson.
He doesn't, even though he's like a highly educated engineer stuff, he doesn't tell the story.
Ernie's despicable. I got a lot of stuff on Ernie coming up in a few minutes, but Ernie's trash man. He's trash man. Yeah. He's married. His wife was a spokesperson for the industry. Got to turn off my video in the background. It's really bad on my end.
All right. Typically I, stick a Bluetooth in my ear.
Yep.
It should be clear.
No, I can hear it on my end really bad. Yeah. It's all good. It's all good, my friend. But
all these people, there's a lot of people, they'll bring it up for a second, and then they don't know the details, so I try to get a hold of them, email them, or whatever, and I can never get a hold of these people. There's a lot of them, and I can't get on their shows. There's a couple of them, years, I can call you. If I said you're full of shit,
yep.
Then I would say it. But you're not.
Well, like
my findings.
Honesty is really easy to remember. Honestly, just the truth is really easy to remember. So I always wonder how the apologists, they know the truth, and so but they didn't get the education to tell the truth. They get the education to come across as this physicist or academic, and their job is to tell a lie, right, with a straight face. And we got a poll tonight about the banana people. Years ago, we used to call them, when this first happened, we used to call them the banana people, and I used to attack them. An entire video dedicated to yelling at somebody who said it was like a banana.
Well, actually, I do have another instrument that identifies...
Bananas are probably radioactive from nuclear fallout, but if you go to the supermarket, you see bananas, you're not going to run away, right?
Right. Well, the other instrument will specifically pick up potassium-40 and cesium-137. I don't want it that much. The gamma spectrometer is the best. Now, I could test for other isotopes, but I have to have the source.
Right,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yes, you calibrate it, yeah.
So, which is fine. Potassium-40 is fine. It's natural in the plant.
It's harmless, it's
And
innocuous,
it's not a
it's benign,
byproduct.
right? Potassium-40, your body doesn't accumulate any more than the body needs. The body uses potassium-40. It's everywhere. It's you can't go. The paint on my everything is on my shirt. It's everywhere. But your body will hold a certain amount of potassium-40. Regulates. It's called homeostasis, and so it regulates the potassium-40 and zinc and carbon and normal everyday magnesium and everything else. Like the thermostat regulates the temperature in your house, or the cruise control regulates the speed of your car. It's a natural thing. You don't. But man-made will go into your body and it will start gathering up and sequestering and staying in your body. But natural, harmless, stupid, everyday potassium-40 doesn't have those attributes, right?
Yeah, I eat a banana every day when I can get it. You know, I get the organic bananas.
I won't buy them. I hate the industry so much. I can't look at a banana anymore. That's sad, isn't it? I used to like them one time. They were good. I liked them in ice cream and cereals.
But you know, banana potassium-40 isn't from busted up uranium atoms or split uranium atoms.
Well, reactors don't make
All the
potassium-40,
neutrons are
right?
blown out.
Reactors don't make potassium-40, right?
No, not that I know of.
No, they don't. No.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't claim to know everything, but I know the stuff I've been doing. Actually, since I was in high school. You know, I used to look at the periodic chart of elements and all this other stuff, and
Sure. Fascinating, right?
Like I said,
Nuclear has its own charts, man-made.
they're all man-made.
Yes,
And
right.
anything from uranium.
Oh, you're on the
That's
speakerphone.
split. What's that?
You're on the speakerphone.
No, I just got a Bluetooth in my ear.
Oh.
Maybe I'm talking too loud.
I don't know. Well, it's barking. My volume is barking back into the. It's all good. I was just trying to see if there was a solution. That's all. Hey, I got a big show to get through yet. I got a couple hours of work ahead of me.
All right, I'll let you go.
You sure you got
All right,
nothing
I'll
else
let
you want
go.
to throw? You got anything you want to throw out there before you go?
I'll try to get to the oxygen testing and the proper zero calibration to 20.9%.
Yeah, it's gone down since Fukushima, right?
I've seen it vary a lot.
Yeah, since Fukushima,
Especially in the mass.
I've covered it probably 100 times, right? And you know me, I'm a pack rat, right? I keep everything. I've been at this too long is the problem. I got too much, and there's nothing else, no room in my brain for anything else anymore. It's just nuclear, piece of shit nuclear. Okay, listen, Gert, we'll let you go. Thank you, my friend. Looking forward to your next test.
Okay, all right, bye.
Okay, my friend. God bless. Take care. That was Gar. He's he likes calling in and scaring the shit out of me. And you probably. Because when I heard the numbers, they frightened. I'm thinking of all the other ratios, right? It's hard to sleep on those nights, unfortunately. As marine scientists, we have considered this could specifically mean for the world's oceans. That's quite the arrogant statement, if I do say so myself. We'll get to that. Think about this statement here from the U.S. or Japanese American ambassador to the U.S. Secretary General, UN, which as far as I can tell shouldn't exist, said that it's no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the whole world depends on number 4 reactor not melting down. So this is reactor 4. As long as this didn't happen, well, this is what it looked like originally. Well, that's not true. Hang on. There you go. Coming right at you. Originally, it looked like the building to your left. Reactor 3 is to your right. So which one looks worse? They're both just completely gone. But reactor 3 was the mixed oxide fuel to your right. So reactor 4, they tore the top off it and left a stump there, which is completely destroyed. And then they cleaned up around it until they ran out of homeless and destitute and victims of society, and the immigrants don't speak the language. And then they claimed it looked like this. And there's many, many media that came out and said they're in the fuel pool at the top of the building, which would be way up there. And you got to be way above it to look down on it. You're almost up to the roof right here of a building that don't even exist. And people say, Dana, is that you walking in the video? I say, yeah, it is actually. Radiation is streaming into the atmosphere after number 4 fuel pool dries in a fire. Now, Eryn Gunnarsson made the assemblies the racks for the assemblies in the fuel pools for 70 reactors exactly like Fukushima. Let's see what Eryn's going to lie to us and tell us today.
The Unit 4 was damaged twice. It was damaged by all of the earthquakes that occurred, and it was also damaged by a series of explosions over the first week or two of the accident. So the building is structurally weakened. Now, Tokyo Electric's acknowledged that. They went in May and June of last year. This is more than a year ago, and put an enormous number of extra structural supports directly under the fuel pool to keep the bottom of the pool from breaking through.
Well, this is supposed to be them going in, putting... Now, there's only a few feet of the building left, right? You can't go in because there's no pool for starters. As you can see, to the left is reactor 4 originally. So the claim that they're gone in to put under the fuel pool, when the fuel pool actually doesn't even exist, that's quite the magic trick. I tell you what, there's 2 fuel pools. They're stuffed because they don't have a repository anywhere on the planet, let alone Japan, to store. Now they have a common spent fuel pool. That was right behind reactor 4. And you can see some of the debris up there in the corner. They released 736 pictures last year from a drone, and when you zoomed in, everything is pixelated, including the spent fuel pool, which is actually nowhere near as high. The fuck? Ha! Hang on. Got too much ice in my water. Excuse me. There is no fuel pools. These are unbelievable. All the medias have faked the fuel pools. So why would they do something like that, Dana? Well, because that's what they've always done. I've been telling lies for 80 years. There's no lie that's too egregious to tell. Send us people who don't mind dying. Now, that's not the first time Eryn Gunnarsson done that for 3 Mile Island. Here he is talking about that.
I hired employees that could only stay on the job for 3 minutes before they exceeded their personnel exposure.
So if you can only stay there for 3 minutes, you got a lethal dose. That's a lethal dose, which is the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, and the immigrants who don't speak the language. Now, he was talking about 3 Mile Island. Let me walk you back to 3 Mile Island very quick as we get through this. How Dick Thornburg masterfully handled the 3 Mile Island disaster. That's him with the black glasses. He refused to issue a general evacuation order, which could cause a panic, create a panic. Now, the reason you have 100 sirens, you didn't at that time, but that's why they got the sirens. Activists after 3 Mile Island demanded they have sirens. And that's why most plants have 100 sirens within 10 kilometers or 10 miles. And they pass out stupid iodine pills up to 50 miles. On the third day of the crisis, he recommended pregnant women and preschool children living within 5 miles leave the area. So he made sure they're all poisoned before he let them leave. Testing of the evaporators. Now, this was Arnie Gunnison and Lake Barrett. Testing of the evaporators, this was a few years later, began at 3 Mile Island. The 3 Mile Island nuclear plant prepares Wednesday began testing equipment used to boil off 2.3 million gallons of water they poured over the reactor core. Small amounts of one element tritium. So they're claiming that tritium, which is up, you can imagine, in 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, I guess. What's the year on this story here? 89. It was over a decade later. 12 years later. They claimed that tritium was the only isotope in the water that they poured over, and everything was filtered out, with no evidence, right, of that, of course, that I've covered this subject for a decade. Each year, many times, and their anniversary, I cover it, extensively. Okay, so they claim they boil off 3 million gallons, roughly, into the environment of radioactive water. And they said the release effect on the average person living within 50 miles of 3 Mile Island, 50 miles, it's not going to stop there, will be less than the amount of radiation received from a year of watching colored television. Those people should be arrested, beaten up, and disposed of at Fukushima, maybe, or right, give them a Nobel Prize for the world's biggest lie, I suppose. Sheep, now, after Chernobyl, almost 3,000 miles away in the United Kingdom, they closed 9,400 farms. I know it says 9,000, but it was actually 9,420-something farms were closed. 400 are still closed today. They should never open the other ones. They only looked for cesium because they love you so much. If you got to close 9,000 farms 3,000 miles away, your water is not fit to drink, or the rest of your country, the air is not going to be fit to breathe. That's the evidence right there. And bad teeth are typical after a lot of exposure for the future generations, right? Here's Ernie pretending he's at the fuel pool. Well, I got him put up there with a fuel pool, but he's going to pretend the fuel pools actually exist.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
And what a terrible person to do something like that, right? So the fuel pools are at the top of the building that doesn't even exist. That was Reactor 4 depiction. So 450,000 times above detection levels, just one. Map shows Fukushima fallout in the United States. The dose in the northeast and the Great Lakes is equal to the west coast. And now this model is only based on 20 days of Fukushima radioactive fallout, 20 days. This is why we call it the Doomsday machine. Would be like Chernobyl on steroids if the spent fuel pool catches fire. There's 3,450 spent fuel assemblies in each of the pools. And this is reactor 3. You can see they're also gone too. The explosions at Fukushima can only have been caused by a meltdown of the reactor core. That's a 190-foot building. They refuse to acknowledge that that is the building. Same as the other pictures. They refuse to acknowledge. Reactor 4 looks like that to the left. They're telling everybody it looks like this. And it's the same thing for reactor 3. They refuse to acknowledge that it's damaged or gone. So both of those Doomsday machines, reactor 4 to the right and reactor 3 to your left, they faked them. Even a limited nuclear war would be a climate catastrophe. And as marine science, we consider what this could specifically mean for the world's ocean. Here's a study from Germany talking about just the radiation that's going in the ocean, not the airborne like I showed you.
Maybe worse than thought. Studies from last year indicate that radioactive water will contaminate the entire Pacific Ocean in just 6 years. Kim Min-ji reports.
This graphic shows the gradual contamination of the Pacific Ocean due to leaks of radioactive water from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan. The simulation, which was run by a German marine research institute, shows the entire Pacific waters being polluted by radioactive water in just 6 years.
Okay, so this is France's model of Fukushima airborne. It's based on 16 days at the end of the model. So it shows the whole planet covered with radiation. So I decided to go out on the ocean from Vancouver to Alaska, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada to Alaska, USA, and I repeated the research expedition year after year. The species to your left were exterminated permanently. We went back year after year. The species never came back. So a nuclear power plant has the ability to wipe out all the species. It was true in the forest, too. There was nothing in the forest. There was no insects at the high tide lines or anywhere else. And the high tide lines up here should have had around 30,000 insects. So I repeated this year after year. The pictures to the right is where I went back year after year. In 2011, that's what it would look like to your left. And so how do I close my eyes and not see that every day? See? That's why I'm here 5 days a week. Because you better wake up. This is not a game. This is not a conjecture. Not an opinion. This is factual. This is documented now. For 6 years, year after year, doing the entire coastline, 4 to 5 months on the ocean without coming home. So I'm not just going down on a beach or something. I'm physically on the ocean without coming home. And from one end of the coast to the other end of the coast, with 27,000 islands, a tropical rainforest exterminated. That's crazy, yeah? And we got to get that story out. We can't pretend that everything is hunky-dory because we're in a catastrophic event now. This is an extinction event. What I showed you is an extinction event that has the exact attributes of an extinction event. This is an extinction event. This is not perhaps, this is not maybe, this is not in the future, right? This is not limited work to cause a climate catastrophe. This is not a climate catastrophe on its own. This is a extinction level event. And that's why you see the Doomsday machine at the top of the headline tonight. Let's keep it rolling, 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 only rolling. Alrighty, so in the United Kingdom, there's around, in the U.S. military, there's around 54 rapes every day in the military, men and women. There's around 29,000 rapes a year. So if they're raping their own that much, how much they're going to rape in the countries they're going to occupy? This guy is raping and sexually assaulting his subordinates on this nuclear submarine. And males included, yeah? A junior male. So if you don't do what I do, you won't get this cushy job on the submarine when we go ashore. That's it for you. But I got a wife and kids. Don't matter. You want a job or not. That's how it's done, right? A Sellafield big winner at the Global Awards. Look at wearing tuxedos and bow ties. From Sellafield, one of the biggest disease factories in human history, which is a nuclear degenerate site in the United Kingdom. Wins big winners at the Global Awards for nuclear. What a disgusting industry, eh? Try to make each other feel like humans. The company won 4 awards. The Process Safety Awards for Sellafield. A safety award. Good God, man. What are you, a lunatic? What kind of degenerate employees you got working there that they would actually go there in their bow ties and accept an award for safety at a nuclear disaster known as Sellafield, which is surrounded by farms? Hang on. It's like, it's hard to wrap your mind around if you're not familiar with the topic. Oh, yeah. Sellafield. That's always my favorite. Come on, system. Just give me a minute. How about this headline here about Sellafield? Killer hot particles, Sellafield coast like Chernobyl and Fukushima exclusion zone. The little community they got there called Columbia. I'm going to do this again. Bear with me. It's worth it. Sometimes my system will get a little bit slow. Depends on if it's the old ports or high ports from the external hard drives, right? Because you're talking about around 10 terabytes plugged into this thing. La 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 la. Here's another good headline. Plutonium from Sellafield in all the children's teeth. They're out getting team awards. Yeah, all the kids got plutonium in their teeth. It don't matter, we got our tuxedos. And the night was topped off with Sellafield Limited National Nuclear Laboratories. There's some serious disease factory there. In a joint entry picking up the overall achievement awards for its winning entry. A testament to our long-standing collaboration with our partners. Congratulations to all the mass murderers. The nuclear industry won't forget you anytime soon. We appreciate the genocide, enthusiasm. I'm still waiting for that to show up. Just try again. I must have pumped it into the wrong hard drive. Oh, no, yeah, no. I can't remember what the search term was because I got so much. Oh, it was the first one. I was just too stupid to notice. Okay, so here we go. Seeing is believing, hopefully. Let's do this the hard way. Voila! What's up? I'm going to put it on the big screen. So this is they had a nuclear meltdown in 59. You see the farms are right up to the site. So they've been poisoning people through the supermarkets on top of everything else for around 70 years because they love you so much. Why is it surrounded by farms? And they also reprocessed mixed oxide fuel here, which is insidious releases, just monstrous releases. So it's bad enough it's uphill from the ocean. But to be surrounded by farms, that's some serious evil right there, man. That's like over the top evil. How do you get this evil? Look at this. You eating that food, you're getting sick, and you're going to die from it. They could have used geothermal. Would have solved all their problems. No bananas. See, the banana routine is about robbing you of your future and your children's future and destroying your country. Bring an abandoned coal power plant on lines, entirely carbon-free, and could work on nearly every gas, coal, oil, and nuclear plant on the planet, just retroactively. So this was about poisoning you, see, Sellafield, look at it, all the farms. Now, if you go drive down those roads and take some pictures, they're going to come out and get all your personal information. They're going to search your car, and they're going to try to find something to screw you on. If you got a camera, they're going to literally lose their minds. But if you go dress up as a farmer and stand there, they won't say a word to you. There's all nuclear power plants and processing facilities worldwide. 99% of them are surrounded by farms. Do you think that's an accident? Just a coincidence? You're wrong. They're purposely trying to destroy you, and they've gone crazy now with Fukushima. The governor demands President Biden in New Mexico block nuclear waste sites in New Mexico. Holtec, Chris Singh, will store up to 100,000 metric tons of spent fuel rods, which is 220 million pounds of fuel rods splitting the atoms into your environment all day. Now, the big problem is it's on an earthquake fault line, and the weekend they had a 5.3 earthquake on land, and shallow at that. So it's the worst spot on the planet. You're going to be, when you're having earthquakes on land, that's the worst spot you want to put a nuclear disease factory like a holding facility. So they're going to try to convince you that the only thing can be released is like bananas, and you should reject that. You should reject that, and you should call for them to be held accountable, because people who claim man-made anthropogenic radiation is like a banana should be jailed, and they shouldn't lose their degrees, and they should never be allowed to work in the nuclear industry if they're ever free again. Again, it makes more sense to burn them at the stake and get it over with, and that'll be a lesson to the other scum degenerates not to claim it's like a banana. So if they've done it retroactively, all the nuclear scientists and academics who told people it was like a banana, you would have to put them all in jail. You'd have to build 1,000 more jails if you took them from all the different countries. Because that's their game. They've been doing this for 8 decades, lying to you, manipulating you. Getting educations to get the job to manipulate you, to lie to you publicly. It's called MIT University, Stanford University, Oxford University, Berkeley University, Harvard University. When you look at all their presentations on nuclear accidents, they'll claim it's like a banana, a potato chip, and walking in the sunshine. These are misdirections. These got nothing to do with anthropogenic man-made radiation. It's absolutely hideous that's considered acceptable, standard, everyday practice. All your TV will do it. All the Hollywood's going to do it, movies, and your children are bombarded with it in primary, elementary, and high school, and universities with that propaganda. And they also have been doing it with characters like the Hulk, Spider-Man. These were directly created by the nuclear industry to disenfranchise your children from the reality of nuclear waste. Because your children live in a fantasy world, right? And so when you let them watch Spider-Man and the Hulk, you are harming them permanently. It's child abuse to let your children watch Simpsons, Spider-Man and the Hulk, and many other of these, SpongeBob in Bikini Atoll. Sponges that came to life from radiation. Nobody thinks that's strange? And they polluted your like YouTube is polluted with this stuff, this propaganda, it's absurd betrayal, this hideous, monstrous betrayal. Imagine how much money they put into The Simpsons, for starters, and then the Hulk and Spider-Man. Try wrapping your mind around it, and all about, propaganda. Destroying your loved one's ability to rationalize the truth, to disarm them. So when you talk about radiation, their subconscious is saying, what? Superman and the Hulk and Spider-Man and the Simpsons and SpongeBob are bad. You're bad. They make me giggle and laugh. They're good, Dana. No, they've made you incapable of getting out of harm's way. So, like, if you live within 10 miles of a nuclear power plant, you should get rid of your home. You are in danger. There's always hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools, for goodness sakes. It keeps you complacent by... I won't watch TV, right? I have different programs that I watch, but it won't have nothing to do with the TV machine. What happened, that's why I'm able to have a conversation. That's why I'm able to do these presentations 5 days a week that are an absurd amount of work, by the way. It's an absurd amount of work. It's a ruthless amount of work each day trying to have this conversation. What's happening with the radioactive waste facility in South Australia, the savage... Originally, South Australia... The government spent $300 million trying to brainwash the people in this little community. And we covered it, I think it was 2016. Royal Commission. It's interesting because they don't have a king and a queen, but they call it royal. Okay, so this is Kimba, where they're going to put the nuclear waste. They tricked the population into voting, yes, and surrounded by farms. Active prime farmland. That's one of the... Whenever you hear nuclear, you got to say, oh, which farmland is that occupying? Because that's the right response, isn't it? Multiple hurdles stand in the way in the Australian radioactive non-area Agency is pressing ahead with plans for Kimba, on agricultural land. No shit, Batman. 1,700 kilometers west of Australia's Nuclear Science and Technology Organization. Almost 2,000 kilometers away from the nuclear science mass murderers. And a secure halfway house for intermediate level waste, which will be interred for 50 years before it's moved to a more suitable facility. So the intermediate level waste, you're going to leave it there for another 50 years. They got a picture of a guy stood up by drums. How come? Because subconsciously, for people who were reading the story don't know any better, they think it's safe because it's in a drum. It gets worse. It gets worse. You have no idea. Australia has no high-level waste. Actually, it does because it has a reactor. A low-level waste in cubic meters is what you're looking at there. The Defense Department. Why does the Defense Department got so much low-level waste, I wonder? Here's the protest. Now, the natives, who are the actual owners of the land, weren't allowed to vote and were excluded on top of that. And then they said they couldn't sue them or something, but they're actually suing them in court. Australia Radioactive Waste Agents Non-Agency CEO Sam the Scam Usher, standing in front of 100-ton, I said 50 tons earlier, 100-ton transport and storage cask that contains intermediate level waste, which is supposed to be not too bad, well, compared to the fuel rods, which are lethal from very long distances, is so well shielded that a person standing 10 meters away for 1 hour would receive equivalent radiation dose to eating half of one banana. Half of one banana. So then this person is getting 60,000 bananas because they're by a thin, skinny 45-gallon drum. To claim that it's the animosity equivalent of 1/2 of a banana is shit for brain award for life. That's a despicable sack of shit. This disgusting maggot, hideous, gross, despicable parasite claiming that it's like a banana should have all their hair pulled out of their heads legally and should never be allowed ever to work in a nuclear institution or anywhere near it. It's the lowest form of life to claim it's like a banana. You really got to be an absurd, despicable monster, a hideous, odious, gross, and despicable mass murder to claim it's like a banana. To use the word banana is the ultimate insult to you. It's the ultimate go fuck yourself is what he's doing when he says banana. He's saying go fuck yourself. Shut your fucking mouth. That's what he's saying to you. A revolting, hideous sack of shit. You put them in a suit and they're an instant monster in the nuclear industry. 100 tons, is it? 100 tons. That's crazy. 100 tons and it's like a banana, Dana. People like that, these are not humans. They don't have any of the attributes of a human, right? So you get 200,000 pounds of shielding. It's like 1/2 of a banana. You got a 45-gallon drum and everything is hunky-dory. Which lie do you believe? Because they're both lies. You don't believe either one, right? That's a useful idiot. Here, go over there and stand up. I need your picture so the big wigs can say it's like a banana. The degenerate pukes can say it's like a banana. I like to stick a fuel rod up his shit shaft. I apologize. Descending into their world now. Now I'm like them. Now I'm insane like them. To eating half a banana. Like someone says that to me, it's not going to go over really good. I'm going to ream them out. I'm going to chase them as they're running away, calling them a scumbag and a degenerate sack of shit. In fact, I'll trip them up and call them, so I can call them a degenerate scumbag for a few extra seconds. Even scumbag Boing Boing says bananas aren't a good way to explain radiation exposure. They're not radioactive. Something that everything has, which is potassium-40, and that it's harmless, it's innocuous. We're acclimated to potassium-40 through genetic superior selection. We wouldn't exist, you know. And to claim that they're radioactive, they should stick 1,000 bananas up their ass, whoever said that. Government fights to keep Kimba nuclear waste dump site disrespectful, says the traditional owners, which is 100% true, who were excluded from the vote. Federal government in Australia, the lunatic and the Mineral Council of Australia, since 2017 has spent $10 million in legal expenses. They want to put it in prime farmland on top of that. Why not put it out in the desert where they've done all the nuclear testing that's radioactive? Well, they don't want their scumbag workers to get sick, Dana. But isn't that what should happen to them? They got a bunch of hicks in a farming community who know nothing about nuclear to make a decision that affects the entire planet, not just Australia. And they attacked them with propaganda for several years before they had the so-called referendum. So you can't have a referendum when all you're fed is propaganda. That's why the people that says is like a banana, the subhuman species that claims is like a banana, the monsters that claim is like a banana, should be jailed for 10 to 20 years and lose their degrees on top of that so they can never work in the industry again. Because that's such a dangerous thing to do, to lie to people, and you're disarming them. Right? And not only that, you're weaponizing them because they're now idiots. You can't have a future on endless lies for decades. It's finally coming back to roost. It's despicable. And the reason they want to put it, one is to poison you with your farms, but the other one is because they don't have a solution and they can't talk about nuclear power until they got a solution, is the way they see it. But there's no reason. It's illegal, by the way, in Australia to have a nuclear reactor. It's legal on a constitutional level. It's written into their doctrines. Landowners, farmers, on each side of the proposed disease factories are comfortable with a nuclear waste disease factory dump going there, comfortable, because they think it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine. What a disgusting statement, though. That sentence right there. It's right up there with the banana statement, see? Above ground nuclear waste storage remains high risk. Your letters to professional engineering. Professional engineering. How many do we cover of them each week again? Hundreds. It's the tall, skinny stack in the background. That's hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools. And in the right conditions, you can see it like that, where it looks like steam, see? And they're surrounded by farms. The reason this is an issue, and brother and sister, this is an issue, is there's irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. to try to give you context of what 50 becquerels a kilogram really actually is in the big scope of nuclear, just bear with me. No shortcuts in my world. Why can't I have a shortcut like every other bullshit propaganda machine out there? Because telling the truth is no fun. You got to be honest and accurate all the time. Not fear. Got to work like a dog all the time. But I mean, even no matter which story you're going to read, you're going to find a propaganda. I'll give you a demonstration of it in this one here. So 1 becquerel, and what we're talking about is 50 becquerels per kilogram. Children will see irreversible heart damage. And if you're eating food from nuclear power plants that are hemorrhaging radiation 24 hours a day in all those farms, there's 1,000 fuel pools worldwide. There's 1,800 illnesses. So 1 curry is 37 billion becquerels. That's the sad part of this story. I can't just tell a story. I got to provide endless documentation. It's okay. I don't mind. Okay, so 37 billion becquerels per curry. And so let's say cesium-137 is 88 curries per gram. Just let me show you how wacky this whole story actually is. What's the number again? 88 curries with 37 billion. So 37 big ones. 37 billion times 88 curries. And you got a gram. So divide that into 50 becquerels. Equals 65 billion children could be poisoned by a gram. So when these reactors that contain millions of pounds just in the fuel pools and the reactor cores and multiple buildings are lost, and then do your math, and then every gram is 3,256,000,000,000 atoms. And it only takes 50 atoms to destroy your children's future, and where you're going to liquidate all your assets in order to try to get them healthy again, right? Okay, it doesn't end there. So when they say there's a 3,840 square mile strict radiation dose control zone, they're not including the evidence I showed you earlier where they closed 9,420-something farms in Ireland and Scotland, United Kingdom, after Chernobyl. Right? It's very deceitful, very dishonest. But the magnification as it moves up the food chain is horrific numbers. And so that's why 50 becquerels a kilogram, right, is such a small fraction. If I take 50 becquerels away from a gram, statistically it doesn't seem to matter, right? But in reality, it's some serious damage. The current above-ground storage remains a high-risk option because it's vulnerable to terrorists. No, it's always hemorrhaging into your environment. It is a terrorist. It's a one great big, endless, dirty bomb hemorrhaging into your environment, splitting atoms. The fuel is still splitting the atoms. Once it comes out of the containment, the reactor, after 18 months, now it's splitting atoms into the environment forever and ever and ever. On a scale that the math won't make sense to many people because it's such a big number. I just showed you what a gram can do. That's significant, see? Because it only takes one of them these atoms, these becquerels, they're pulsing energy every second, almost at the speed of light. Your body attacks it for the rest of your life, trying to build a tumor, and eventually builds a tumor around it. But imagine if you're bioaccumulating it, because of the nuclear industry has gone into full-on genocide and omnicide mode since Fukushima. Once Fukushima happened, the industry come out and said, well, fuck you. We're going to poison all of you now. We're not going to do nothing. We'll let the homeless go there and die. But no nuclear scientists ever went to Fukushima. The cooling of the decayed products, which is splitting the atoms, would be by natural ventilation with filtration for emergency use. Natural ventilation is all the gas are vented into the environment. They're still splitting the atoms. They don't need to be in water anymore after 4 decades. They're still splitting the atoms. So when you add it all up, it's the worst thing can happen to a planet is nuclear industry shows up. Because they have no respect, not even for their own selves. Imagine being from Sellafield, working at the disease factory known as Sellafield, and going to a global awards with a bow tie and everything else on. Imagine what kind of disconnect you actually got to have to do something like that. Imagine what kind of a kooky wacko you actually got to be to participate in that. Imagine what kind of dishonest and disingenuous a weirdo you actually got to be to do something like that. Most of the waste is in-term storage at the Sellafield in Crumbia. They have huge cancer clusters in Crumbia, particularly in children. And I got studies where they try to blame it on the common cold. Oh, they all got leukemia because of the cold. Got nothing to do with Sellafield, nothing to do with all the farms around Sellafield. Imagine how evil you got to be to produce that study. And we covered maybe 60,000 of these studies over the years on live shows like this. Some decades ago, this was seen as a logical location to explore deep geological disposal, but was challenged by the anti-nuclear pro-life protesters, and the government backed off. Again, the contempt. They can't write it without the contempt, see? It's so blatant that when they write it, it's like, what? That's why we do these shows. And I only show you a fraction of the propaganda in each story because you can't keep up with it. I got to read the whole story. Then I got to read it again, highlight it, and capture it. Then I got to sit there and do a show and tell the story again. So I'm traumatized every night when I'm ready to go to bed. I'm still from the evil. Like, lucky for me, you know, I'm able to tolerate a certain amount of evil each day. But you got to realize I'm at this all day, all night, every day of the week, 7 days a week. This is so important. We got no options. We don't have any resistance. We got to educate the population, and hopefully people will pick up the baton and stick it up in a few of their noses or something, maybe, right? NANO Nuclear Energy Incorporation further strengthens its nuclear technical team, which you don't need it, right? Because geothermal can replace everything. These are for the small, fabled modular reactors in Portland. The nuclear industry in Portland, man. These are goblins, aren't they? These are degenerate. I've talked to a few of them that call me up and harass me over the years. They're always degenerates. And they're cowards, which is the really interesting thing about it. Whenever I talk to them, you can hear them ready to defecate at any given second. As soon as I raise my vocals, they'll pee in their pants and everything. Nuclear reactors are an integral part of a broader concept known as the nuclear fuel cycle. That's such an honest statement. See, the nuclear fuel cycle is always hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. The reactors are just... It's like trying to make clay, and you got to put it in the kiln for a certain amount of time. That's what the fuel, it's all about the fuel. It's nothing about reactor power as a byproduct. It's all about poisoning all the species. It's all about killing everything. with radioactive emissions. That's why you call it the Doomsday machine, because Fukushima released so much in such a short time. It's not like a bomb where it goes off and then that's it. These are perpetually hemorrhaging radiation, like the fuel pools, except infinitely scarier. Like the Thorium isotopes are the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod. Not iodine-129, surprisingly, or cesium or anything like that. The biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod is the Thorium isotopes. And Thorium, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium, which is named after the devil. In collaboration with the Idaho National Laboratory, which is built in one of the biggest aquifers in that part in Idaho, and it's contaminated since the 50s. Like all of these national laboratories are built on aquifers that are completely contaminated since the Manhattan Project, and are still feeding all the farms and the cities within several hundred miles of these disease factories. Like this is not a game. This is the most important topic in human history, period, bar nothing. There's nothing that supersedes it. Even if we have a war, this is still the most important topic in human history. It's a catastrophic event to all the species. You know, when they used to do the nuclear tests, if that's what you want to call it, this is a war using the same radioactive fallout, the same weapon. Oh, we're just going to call it a test. Uh-huh. You can, but I'm not. I'm going to call it what it is, nuclear war, disease factories. That the small bombs, one thing they noticed was that the water changed the structure for an 1,800-mile circumference around the bomb. And so, like structured water, plants will grow 3 times more foliage with 3 times more fruit and mature 3 times or 30% sooner. I got that wrong. 30% more foliage, 30% sooner, and 30% more product if you grow food in structured water. Right, because there's 2 types of water. Unstructured, which is stuff you hit with chemicals or electrolysis, will change the structure. Scientists don't, and when I say scientists, I mean scientists, don't know why water changes the structure, but you can actually buy a device to change it back. But one of the things that typically change water structure is if you freeze the water. That will actually get it back, because water is the only liquid that exists in all 3, like solid, liquid, and gas, right? The only one that does that is water. You can't have life without water and carbon, by the way. Working to develop its proprietary, portable, and on-demand capable advanced nuclear micro reactor, aka micro small modular reactors. This is not one we hear very often. They're talking down to 8 megawatts or something. The path to net zero starts here. In fact, the path to net zero can only be achieved with geothermal. Everything else is a pollutant. Radiation is the worst one because it saturates the environment with invisible plumes. You can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or touch it. And it's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. Carbon doesn't do that. Carbon's good. You can't have, if there's no carbon, there wouldn't be a shred of life anywhere on the entire planet, not even bacteria. Nothing. Smaller, cheaper, and safer doesn't exist. You can't call it smaller, cheaper, and safer when it's $2 billion a pop. And it doesn't exist. Right? It's the same fable. It's meant to make you stop trying to have a future and think this is going to be, nuclear is somehow going to be the savior. You're making a fatal mistake for the future of humanity and the species. What species might survive? If Putin nuked the UK, 106 top targets in a nuclear winter that could starve millions. Well, the nuclear winter is well underway. It's called Fukushima, the Doomsday machine. A goat was born with a human face, and it looks like it's wearing glasses and resembles Santa Claus. This is a goat. There you go, goat. Doesn't look like a goat to me, but there it is. That's scary, isn't it? Looks like Boris Johnson to me. Look at it. You tell me that's not Boris Johnson? Out screwing goats. Report exposes extent of fake data by the Japan Steel Works. I have to laugh because this is used in reactors, important parts of the reactors. What scumbags, they faked it. There's a whole, I got a whole list of it. I have to dig it up and do a whole show on it again one day because you took down my other site last year, right? The final report by outside lawyers in the factory's faked inspection data by Japan Steel Works Limited is 20 fresh cases of subpar equipment delivered to nuclear power plants worldwide. Among 20 or so cases, only one involved a product used domestically. The rest are shipped worldwide. So there's all kinds of nuclear reactors out there set up to fail and melt down, folks. So this is from 2021. Mitsubishi Electric fake train test data likely for decades. And they make a lot of equipment for nuclear. We could do some amazing science with a human base on the moon. Yeah, well, it's 50 years later. How come you haven't gone back? How come no country's so-called gone back? Why did you stop? Why did you give up? Why wouldn't you use the moon? It's a perfect spot. It's way better than a stupid space station sitting in a maze of satellites, and if one crashes into the other, you got 500 million pieces flying around at 17,000 miles per hour, chopping up everything else. They shouldn't be in space. They shouldn't spend a nickel on steering into space. We got a big problem on this planet we got to deal with. It's called nuclear power, nuclear industry, and they're vicious. Again, better science on the moon. So they're trying to sell this idea because the Artist 1 rocket is launched with no astronauts on board. Nobody knows why except for NASA. NASA's not, dead man tells no tales. Since it is not radioactive stuff and doesn't cause... They're talking about the most valuable mineral on the moon is helium-3, which could be used for nuclear fusion. These are the industries just... The amount of lies the fusion industry tells is just overwhelming. Like, so 2 years ago, they said he broke the Holy Grail. They actually got back more power than they put into the fusion reactor for the first time in 50, 60, 70 years. I was like, okay, well, let's find the story. It was equal to an extra 9-volt battery of pure extra energy. Well, you're talking about something at 150 million degrees Fahrenheit. And you're going to claim that you got enough energy to power a 9-volt light bulb or something. So a 9-volt battery is like what you put in your smoke detector. There's zero possibility to extrapolate something like that from a billionth of a second and everything else, right? Zero. It's a total lie. So they come out with a bigger lie last year. Last year was a great lie. They claimed that they got an extra... Now, this is 150 million degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. They're going to boil water to produce power, right? To turn the the turbines with the steam from the water boiling at 150 million degrees Fahrenheit. So the first question is, how much water can you boil at 150 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures? And they said it produced more energy than they put in because it produced an extra 36 liters of boiling water. These are total fabrications, obviously, but that's the official story for all the brain-dead zombies out there that buy into this industry. They're like, this is great, honey. It was extra 36 jugs of water worth of energy. It was amazing. Yeah, but how many jugs of water can you boil at 150 million degrees Fahrenheit temperatures? How were you able to extrapolate that you produced enough extra energy to boil 36 liters, 36 kettles of water? Because you're a lawyer, and the lawyers are getting, 2020 was a 9-volt battery. Last year was 36 jugs of water. What's this year's fusion breakthrough going to be, I wonder? Kind of bizarre. And the world media ran with those stories. It's wonderful. It's just amazing. I was like, God, please make it stop. Since it is not radioactive itself to helium-3 and doesn't cause the material around it to become radioactive. These are morons, these people, aren't they? We can use it for nuclear fusion, which needs deuterium and tritium, but there's only about 25 kilograms worldwide of tritium. Most of that's in Canada. And you'll see them say, oh, well, we're going to produce a truckload of fuel will produce more energy than 60 million barrels of oil. You only got 25 kilograms, for God's sakes, worldwide. And that's because the CANDU reactors produce so much radioactive tritium, they're actually able to harvest some of it. Still, they don't have fuel, right? So going to the moon, they think they can get the fuel for their fabled reactors, rather than come up with solutions like geothermal that already exist. Why not put all the energy into geothermal, solve the problem, and play around with the fusion and waste your time doing that later? The people that work in fusion are wasted humans, right? They're wasted humans. There's no loss to the planet if they were to die. The planet's a better place if they were to die, because all they do is use up trillions of dollars on speculation. That is impossible now. 50 years later, they're just wasting everybody's time. It's never going to come in time in anybody's currently alive's lifespan. The moon serves to be a great platform astronomy. Again, these are all arguments we've heard for 50 years, moron. The moon would be the best place to send someone like you, buddy. South Africa to spend Christmas by candlelight. South Africa got a nuclear power plant with a couple of reactors. They're on a fault line where they have absurd amount of small earthquakes all the time, and has caused many, many cracks and all kinds of foundations there. Not only that, the reactors are well past their expiry date, and they're very brittle from the bombardment of neutrons and X-rays and gamma shines. Repairs will be increase the risk of load shedding. I can't even remember. Don't matter. So they attacked occupied nuclear power plant. Apparently Ukraine fired 12 missiles at it. And now they got another nuclear power plant where they say lost access to power, which means it lost its external power. It needs external power to run. It needs 2 gas, oil, coal, diesel plants, large ones like you run for cities, to run a stupid, idiotic nuclear power plant. Just get rid of the nuclear power plant and run everything off the gas, oil, and coal plants that are running the stupid idiot machine. The relevant statement was made by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is irrelevant, not relevant, the irrelevant. Director General Rafael Gross demonstrates the nuclear safety security situation in Ukraine can suddenly take a turn in Ukraine, increasing the risk of a nuclear emergency. Really? You think no one figured that out, Grossy? After the site's 4 operating power lines were progressively lost over a 2.5 hour. You can't progressively lose a power line. It goes, chip, it's gone. It's supposed to have 4 major feeder lines coming in. So then it's got to run on generators. And again, the industry, nuclear generated hydrogen considered for asphalt production. Again, the idea of the hydrogen is so they can call it renewables, and then they can call nuclear power plants useful. See? That's what that's actually all about. It's as useful as an abscess tube, just letting it sit there. An EDF-led consortium. EDF can't even get their own reactors online. I mean, blackouts all over France all winter long, next winter too. Because next summer is going to be another drought like last year because the glaciers are melted, and that's what they're dependent upon to cool the reactors. 70% of the fresh water in France goes to the disease factory nuclear power plants. Awarded U.S. government funding, nuclear generated hydrogen. Well, this is United Kingdom, so it doesn't really matter. They're batshit crazy. The nuclear industry down there has already destroyed everybody's future. No one's allowed to have a conversation down there. The UK government is the nuclear industry, basically. And they're lunatics. There's not a single person in the nuclear industry or the UK government that I would stay on the same sidewalk with them. They're completely unreliable. Awarded the U.S. government funding to investigate the feasibility of using disease factories and electricity to create hydrogen for use in the production of asphalt and cement. You kind of lose faith, don't you, once you look at the nuclear industry, that humanity has any chance whatsoever. $475,000 in funding for a feasibility study. This is just the nuclear industry. They got, I don't know how many studies they do in a year, but it's the vast majority is nuclear each year. It'll blow you away. If I walk you, I might do that the week here actually, just walk you through a couple of thousand studies non-stop of just the weirdest stuff imaginable. Because we talk nuclear power, right? You should see what they're really up to. And how many of them. And how much money we're talking about. I got the perfect folder there to do another show on that. Small nuclear reactors hold potential for Canada. It's a touchy subject in Canada. People automatically think of the China syndrome. See, you can't read my mind, so shut up. Particularly small nuclear reactors. Well, like, why wouldn't you use geothermal? Why would you try to develop something that still, even when you develop small modular reactor, it won't be as good as geothermal? Aims to use X-rays to melt rocks and repurpose coal and gas plants into deep geothermal wells, effectively transforming dirty fossil fuel plants into clean ones. And a company named Quasi Energy could work on nearly every coal and gas power plant on the planet. If you took all the universities and had a contest to come up with geothermal with this technology, how long would it take you to get up to speed anywhere on the planet? How long? A couple of months? But you're going to wait 50 years for the small modular reactors. You're going to deny your own country a future, your own children, your own planet, so you can keep your paychecks coming in the nuclear industry. Destroy everything so they can keep the nuclear industry afloat for a bit longer. North Korea missile test, the prelude to nuclear war? Why would you say something like that? You fear-mongering sack of shit. Every other country's out there testing nuclear missiles. North Korea does it. All the media got to come out and panic. A dirty nuclear bomb is not a nuclear bomb. I almost wanted to poke my eyes out when I read this one. Then I realized it's from the Union of Unconcerned Scientists. I was like, phew, that was close. I almost read the whole story. And then I read the whole story. Eryn MacDonald, she's a global security analyst at the Union of Unconcerned Scientists, which started up by the Manhattan Project scientists. They're despicable lawyers. Edwin Lloydman is there too, right? Which is surprising that anybody's allowed to talk besides him. So they have a section for global security analysts at the Union of Unconcerned Scientists. Russian troops first occupied Chernobyl, located in Ukraine's disease factory, and cited one of the world's worst nuclear disasters. Rather than say the world's worst nuclear disaster, which is what they're supposed to say, it's illegal to say the truth, which is Fukushima. Zaporizhzhia is one of the 4 nuclear power plants currently operating in Ukraine. No, it's not. They shut the reactors down about a month ago, stupid. These disasters can result in the release of large amounts of radiation, rendering surrounding areas uninhabitable. Surrounding areas, you say? Really? Huh. I find that confusing. Radiation doesn't stay surrounding when a nuclear power plant goes pop. This model here is 19 days later, where I'm pointing, covers the whole planet in radioactive fallout, which is global warming. It's been going on for decades. It never goes away. It's pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. More recently, Russia's statements have raised fears about the use of a dirty bomb. Really? You think that's not a dirty bomb? The Doomsday machine known as Fukushima is not a dirty bomb. That's enough of you, you bitch. Small nuclear cheaper, this is Yahoo, than solar and wind as Canada greens power grid. Actually, the best stuff is, probably never heard of it, it's called geothermal. You can repurpose all gas, oil, coal, and nuclear plants into geothermal. Why would you do anything else? Why are you wasting time on wind and sun when you can have geothermal? Takes up a smaller section of land and everything put together. Anything out there. Small nuclear cheap. Well, who's regurgitating this narrative? Oh, the Canadian energy regulators, which are non-regulators, should hedge its bet on solar and wind, making up the bulk of the country's new power capacity. According to a new report, small modular reactors are the best option. No, they're not. Geothermal is the best option. They got to promote the nuclear or they can't have a job being a scumbag. Right? And they come out and disparage to anything else, and only nuclear can solve it. The same everywhere worldwide. How did my show do last Thursday, the last show? 2 hours, 8 minutes, 28 seconds. After 3 hours, I had 181 views. I had, right away, I had 48 thumbs up. I got 55 right now. 14 hours later, I had 50 thumbs up. So after the show, immediately, 6 minutes later, I had 48 thumbs up. And 14 hours later, I got another 2 thumbs up. 17 hours later, I'm missing 4 minutes because I had to restart the show during the live, so that one's okay. And I only got 3 thumbs up in 17 hours. Welcome to my world. Work like a dog and get 3 thumbs up in almost 24 hours. France's muted nuclear recovery can cool Europe's liquid natural gas demand. Yeah, because France was a big exporter. But they're not. You got 26 reactors offline, not online. And whoever writes for the Financial Post, which is just they regurgitated a writer's story, are typically scumbags, right? Solar farm near former nuclear plant approved. This is important. They're going to put it on top of a coal ash that they need to power the nuclear plant, right? That has no... There's the nuclear plant surrounded by farms, by the way. Chapel Cross nuclear plant. And tons of farms there. Radiation rise detected near Chapel Cross 2016. The latest radioactivity in food. Really? Because it's surrounded by farms, right? The levels remain below the UK European safety limits, which they increased the day after Fukushima tenfold to 1,000 becquerels a kilogram, because Fukushima was raining down on the whole planet. That doesn't mean it's safe because you fabricated a number and called it safe. That doesn't mean it's actually safe. There is no safe. It's man-made. Such a hideous industry with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Not one. Doesn't have a single redeeming quality in the entire industry. Miss Gerger, you butt dialing me again, or? No. Okay, no, you called. Because usually when I get a second call from somebody, it's an accident, right? How's it going?
Yeah, you were talking about water. I don't think I ever mentioned this before, but like I said, I do a lot of testing and calibration on a lot of things.
Yep.
And with the water, now, one of the ways we would test temperature instruments is the melting point of water, which is typically 32 degrees at atmospheric levels. But one of the things I thought my instruments were going funny. You know, this is a few years back. And what I found, you know, all right, I'll explain how I do it. Or there's the standard for calibration is you have like an insulated cup and make sure it's like really insulated, and then you would put the probe in, and it would always be like 32 degrees, and then, you know, if it was like a few decimal points above, you know, you were pretty good in there. But a few years back, what I found was that the melting point of like ice cubes, you would put ice and water, ice cubes in an insulated cup, but then it started going down to, you know, 29, 28 degrees.
Wow.
Now, with salt water, obviously, you would have a different thing.
Yeah, of course. Yep.
So there's something in the water. You mentioned tritium a while back ago.
Right.
But so if there's a lot of tritium or other elements that would change the melting point of water.
Right. Yep.
So,
well, it's kind of,
you know, we have
you can't have tritium without all the other isotopes, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah. changes the melting point, so you don't necessarily need a higher, like, global warming, whatever that's about. But the water itself melts at a lower temperature.
Wow. Yeah, I've never heard that one before.
Yeah.
I've never heard that one before. Wow.
No,
That's madness.
I've been doing this for years, and I would have to calibrate these instruments.
Because you knew it was going to lower. You knew that it was getting lower, right? And so that changed your equation. That's a huge deal. Wow.
But like I said, it's at least a couple degrees.
Less oxygen. Everything is contaminated so much. Like the per liter rainfall from an Ottawa study was 220 million atoms of iodine 129 per liter. Now it doesn't mean that's the only thing in the liter, but I mean these are stunning numbers. These are catastrophic numbers to the species because it saturates the thyroid glands, and species are producing radioactive hormones, so it sterilizes the most vulnerable species like insects and that.
Yeah.
I
haven't seen.
But your water, if that's going into your lakes, because that's where it's going, that's rain falls uniformly, right? And so when it's going into all your aquifers and your lakes and everything, and it pollutes all of that, because it's going to have fission products in it that has those attributes like neutrons, right?
Yeah.
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 Just crazy.
The main thing I wanted to bring up, because I heard you talking about water, and I neglected to bring that up, was the melting point of ice, and it's always been right around 32 degrees. And I use electronics, and I thought like they was giving me shitty electronic.
Because you thought it was a mistake, yeah.
And I bought these. I kept these really old. What the fuck? Alcohol thermometers that are like 30, 40 years old. And they were always consistent.
Yeah, no kidding, yeah.
And I still have them. I'm looking at them right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to find some too now in the antique shops and that. In the future, I'll look for those older thermometers because that's important.
But compare them. Compare them to like the water you get out of whatever. Salt water. It'll always be different. It'll lower the freezing point.
Yeah.
Or melting point.
Yeah.
But mine I've had for decades and decades. And when I bought these like newer electronic instruments, I thought they were like weirded out, but they weren't. They were showing a lower melting point of the water.
Yeah,
So
that's quite the shock, eh?
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. Okay.
I can send you pictures of these instruments. Okay, I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, I appreciate you calling back and told us that one. That's a huge deal. We're almost at the end of the show, and my leg is killing me. We got a big storm coming through tonight, and it's kind of what it is, I suppose. Okay, my friend, thank you again, Gar.
All right, God bless again.
Yeah, God bless you again. Take care, man. Wow, that was crazy. That's an amazing story. That's not something you really want to hear, but I mean, it's part of the equation, unfortunately. Because it's, and you can see why, right? This is a radioactive fallout of neptunium-239 decays into plutonium. And so when you start looking at all these models of radioactive fallout, from Japan's the Doomsday machine, this plutonium-239 dispersal over North America, according to TEPCO's data, which is going to be on their blade, right? And bomb our way through the rest of it. So when you talk about tritium, you can't just have tritium being discharged from the nuclear disease factory surrounded by farms. It's going to be all the other isotopes. When they say tritium, these people should be arrested the same as you would for bananas. She stepped down as mouthpiece of what party she was from. I can't remember. When they talk about tritium, I really want to string people up every time I see it. It infuriates me every time I hear the word. From the industry, that is, right? Sizewell C. Jeremy Hunt gives nuclear plant project go-ahead after Boris. So why wouldn't they use geothermal? Right? They'll talk about wind and solar, but they won't mention the words geothermal ever. Geothermal can replace everything, right? And whenever I see Boris Johnson, look, we had a poll here the other night. Should Boris the Monster Johnson be arrested and charged with sedition and genocide in his country? Because one of his last things he done was remove restrictions from all the nuclear disease factories across Japan. What I mean by that was 14 of those prefectures I got outlined are the prefectures that were banned by 55 countries worldwide. So with a shake of a hand, no academics, no scientists, no referendum, Boris Johnson removed the restrictions from 14 prefectures with no checks and balances. And had made the statement, according to the media, they can't wait for all the supermarkets and corner stores to be full of Fukushima food. So a couple of people can sabotage humanity's future and did. That's not acceptable, see? Even a limited nuclear war could devastate the oceans. Well, here's a nuclear power plant meltdown. This model is based upon 40 days. I'm going to double the speed in a second. There we go. So this is a 40-day model. I'm going to spin through it all the way. So after 40 days, the whole planet is almost covered in radioactive fallout. That's based on venting. It's not based on the actual meltdowns. And I got 6 of these pictures. I've done expeditions from Vancouver to Alaska year after year after year. And the species are gone. This is an extinction event. This is a doomsday machine. You can pretend it's not, but that's all you're doing. I've done the research expeditions. It's undeniably, unassailably gone. This is not up for debate. This is an extinction event. These are doomsday machines. Even a limited nuclear war. Yeah. Well, look, there's your nuclear war. It's called Meltdown and Destroyed Planet Earth. We already covered that one. IAEA decision on Fukushima wastewater release is up to Japan. It's up, not, and look whose name is on the story, Mari Yamaguchi. She's been around since the beginning. She's the cover. Cover story comes from Mari. She's with the AP. AP has 1,800 medias with spider bots, and their websites will automatically aggregate these stories so they show up worldwide with the same pictures, the same author at the same time, the same paragraphs. That's the cover story. If Mari Yamaguchi's name on it, that's part of the cover story, right? A despicable creature at the Foreign Press Center in Japan, which is, we've covered them hundreds of times. Their videos, they're disgusting maggots. They're despicable maggots. They're revolting maggots, yeah? They said it's up to, whether to go ahead with the plan is up to the Japanese government. Not the NRC in Japan, but the Japanese government. Not the universities, but Japanese government. Gustavo Caruso, director of the International Atomic Energy Agency's which is United Nations, which is just a subsidy company, Department of Nuclear Safety and Security, that knows nothing about safety and security, have never, ever done anything to promote safety and security. They have no powers to decide whether Japan should suspend the release, even if it does not fully follow the international standard safeties. The IAEA and their team and security has no power to decide whether Japan should release it or not, even if it don't follow the international standards. The tanks are empty. The tanks were built to trick you. They had 1,000 tanks in 2013. They had 1,000 tanks in 2022. How many tanks did you fill up in 9 years? None. The tanks are a distraction. Total manipulation. If you're pouring water over the reactor core, and you friggin' well are, multiple, and fuel pools that have melted down, you're talking a massive amount of water. Typically, they need 4,500 tons a minute. So a single reactor can fill up the 1,000 tanks 6 times each day. When you melt down, you need more water. The water's flushing straight down into the earth. They're claiming they're sucking the water up and putting it in the tanks. Since 2014, they've been telling that lie. It's a complete 100% misrepresentation of every fact that we know. And the IAEA is quick to tell the same lie. It's not an international energy agency, atomic energy agency. It's an international genocide machine, and that's its entire legacy. If you look at it, that's all they've done. I'm saying there's 1 million tons in 1,000 tanks when they had 1,000 tanks 2013. But 1,000 tanks is nothing. You know, like the water they're claiming, 150 tons a day, is the equal to a garden hose split 4 ways. A half-inch garden hose split 4 ways, being dribbled on nuclear meltdowns at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. I think everybody that's telling these lies should be tarred and feathered and then burned at the stake. These are revolting genocide, omnicide monsters. These are disgusting maggots, like Mary Yamaguchi, disgusting parasites. Fusion power would revolutionize energy if we could just get it to work. Why? What are you talking about? Why won't you use geothermal? Isn't that a better idea, stupid? Than your idiotic, revolting, stupid, money-sucking, resource-intensive, precious, metal-intensive. By the time next decade, you could be reading this story on a phone charged by fusion power. Like, as soon as I read that sentence, I said, well, obviously this is a scumbag to say something like that. This is the total scumbag to say something like that. Ian Blackford rubberized his case for Sizewell C. We don't need nuclear. The case for new Sizewell C. Tidal power extinguishes the argument for nuclear plants, but geothermal permanently does. Geothermal is the best one. Tidal energy is good, but geothermal, you can dig a hole anywhere and tap into 1,000 degree temperatures. It's the perfect source. There really isn't anything that competes with it. It takes up a very tiny footprint. There's no adverse side effects. And BBC question time. But he comes out and skins the nuclear industry, which is $30 billion. Can you imagine how much geothermal you can produce for $30 billion? It's stunning, see? Citing another Royal Society report from 2021, found the UK is capable of generating 11 gigawatts of tidal power, 50% greater than current nuclear capacity. We can produce safe green energy and we don't need scum, degenerate, monstrous nuclear. Way to go, man. Rumors fly over a hidden Call of Duty nuke. So apparently in hidden Call of Duty, if you finish it 5 times, you can get access to nuclears, but people now are claiming they can't find it. Not that I play Call of Duty Warzone 2.0. Might have a hidden nuke. The nuclear industry has infiltrated everything, eh? That was on Twitter, it must be true. Should we start treating robots like people? Oh, I tell my toaster every day how much I love it. And my washing machine. Whoever wrote that article should be ashamed that they're breathing air and wasting the planet's precious fresh air. Super idiot Marcos eyes a strong partnership with France. Like the Philippines gets typhoons at 200, 250 miles per hour regularly since Fukushima. They get tsunamis, by the way, remember 2004. And they're on the ring of fire. They have earthquakes constantly down there. This is the worst spot you can put a nuclear site. Literally the stupidest thing you can do is put nuclear in the Philippines. It's like, it makes me wonder, how the hell did we even make it this far as a planet? Nuclear industry is not helping nothing. Sky News Australia. Iran spreading bloodshed and destruction around the world. You mean America? You mean the United Kingdom? Israel? Certainly you don't mean Iran. You sack of propaganda shit, you. Britain's determination to prevent it by acquiring a nuclear weapon from acquiring a nuclear weapon. They don't spread bloodshed around the world. The United Kingdom does, though. Australia, Albanese says renewables can fight inflation. Nuclear ain't going to do it. The only renewables we should bother with sure is geothermal. If we solve that riddle, and we can, in just 30 or 50 days probably. We entered the process committed to working with our federal, state, community partners to see if a plant could be repowered to return to service as provider of safe and reliable carbon-free generation. They're talking nuclear, folks. The federal program is intended for nuclear reactor projects to cease operation due to economic factors, not for reactors that have already been shuttered. They're talking about money, right? Oh, this was the Paladin nuclear plant. If granted, it will empower us to keep fighting for economic opportunities for Michigan and protect the 1,700 mass murderers' jobs. Nuclear is not worth keeping if it's doing it for jobs or anything else. When the plant closed in May, Holtec got it for a nickel and said it would spend the next 3 years removing the spent fuel into dry cast storage inland from Lake Michigan. Well, there's Lake Michigan. It all runs down to where I'm to down here, by the way. Everything runs down on that side of the Rocky Mountains. Everything runs down to the Atlantic, which is the fresh water. This is the biggest freshwater aquifer on the entire planet, these lakes. They're surrounded with nukes everywhere. It's so evil it defies any kind of rationale. There was even a sodium reactor melted down, right? On Lake Michigan. Holtec proposed a plan to move the radioactive material off-site during the dismantling, and perhaps more by road and rail, and perhaps more controversially by large shipments, barges on Lake Michigan. Putting nuclear power plants on these big freshwater aquifers, that's some serious evil there, man. That's some absurdly evil stuff right there. You disgusting parasites. Wow. You despicable maggots. Holtec is focused on decommissioning a nearly 2-decade-long process. Most nuclear plants are around 60 years. They got to have a coal, gas, oil plant, 2 of them running for the whole time to do that too, not just to run it. Nuclear outperformance, my favorite utility in stocks, says Seeking Alpha. They only deal with stocks. They'll cut your throats. They've been doing this for 12 years almost, tricking people into buying uranium stocks. Well, I believe nuclear energy is the future reliable carbon-free energy. Geothermal is. Nuclear is disgusting. It's disgusting. Why wouldn't you use geothermal? Geothermal is simple. You just go straight down, tap into it, and get rid of the other stuff. Local bus trip in Ibaraki, Tochigi, and Fukushima prefectures. These are 3 brutally radioactive prefectures. Disgustingly radioactive prefectures. So they got this, not bus trip, it's like a challenge. And you got to eat seafood everywhere you go. Let me see if we can find it. Oh yeah, get to Koriyama City. Koriyama City's like, but let me see if I can find it. I can't remember the numbers, but it's brutal numbers. And they only acknowledge cesium, gamma. I can probably find it. Maybe give me a minute. Because that's the end of the show anyway. Might as well do the extra work. Nothing short in my world. Everything is take the long way. Here we go. I got it. Let me see if I can find the appropriate one. So that row here is average disposition density of cesium-137 in the soil. This was United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic. These are scumbags, by the way. You can see how bad Fukushima City, 229,000 becquerels per square meter. I got Koriyama City here too somewhere. All of these communities are just incredibly radioactive. They refuse to evacuate them, right? Here it is. 162,000 per square meter atomic decays a second of just gamma. And that's where they want everybody to go through the 3 radioactive prefectures and hang out in the nuclear wasteland. Great job, stupid nuclear. Nuclear is brilliant at being murderous and stupid. How's the poll doing tonight? I got a big poll. Bring up the big poll, Dana. Should people who claim man-made radiation is like a banana be jailed and lose their degrees? It a stunning 98% of 50 votes. Yeah, liking it. Awesome poll. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to end that poll. We already been going for 2 hours. 2 hours and 18 minutes, and the Geiger counter is still going. It's because I didn't turn it on till 2 minutes before I went live, trying to get an extra 5 minutes out of it. That'll die any second now. Stephen Young donated 50 the weekend. I was trying to raise an extra 100 for a project. We got the small Zodiac put away because we got a Durico windstorm coming through, a weather bomb. And it's howling out there right now, but tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon and the evening is supposed to be really, really, really nasty. Thanks for moderating, Dana. I see you got busy tonight there a bit. And good night to everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Because Conference of Party 27 is over, I wanted to wait. I was going to do that tonight, but I said, well, I should wait for another day to see what other headlines I can pick up, because that'll be the last show, right? It's a great show, too. We got a great show. We'll do a recap These are important that we tell that story because they're promoting nuclear. And they have a huge venue, and they have, a lot of influential people around the world that are perpetrating the crimes of nuclear against humanity. The claimed radiation is equivalent to half a banana from 90 feet away. This is one of the all-time this year scumbags. It really is, right? It was just a... so we got a big storm coming in tonight, and I was hoping to get the tarp on the big boat. That's not going to happen. It's too windy for me to pull it off today. And for the next 5 days, there's going to be snow coming in and wind. And there's not going to be a lot of snow, but some snow. Not like New York. Wow, that was something, eh? Thank you, Gart. You're a good man yourself. Appreciate it. And good night, everybody. Extra hugs for Stephen Young. Thank you, my friend. We still need to raise a bit more, folks. I got a project. I don't want to say it because the industry is paying attention. I was hoping to raise at least another 50 or 100. But anyway, we'll see everybody tomorrow night. That was a good show tonight. We got lots of documentation. We got some phone calls and all kinds of stuff. 334 counts per minute up during the Geiger counter. Wow. Jeez. That's that storm coming in, see? 352 counts per minute. Wow. Sucks. Have a great night. A great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. I hope everybody had a great weekend. We'll see everybody on the next show. Just around the corner. Take care, folks. Thank you, everybody. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It probably won't register, but hopefully some of them do. Have a great night, folks. We'll see everybody soon.